The two monsters... Oh! Alright. No, I'm okay. Oh, Jitsi looked up all concerned. I'm sorry, honey. I was just being silly. Hello there, heroes! I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to what is now officially the final Kamen Rider Dragon Knight review. Note that I did not say episode review. The story that the show, showed us is over now, but we were left with some unanswered questions. And there was one Japanese man that wanted to give us some answers. In 2009, the Japanese Kamen Rider franchise was celebrating the 10th anniversary of its revival. As part of the celebration, Toei broadcast a Japanese dub of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight on its satellite channel, Toei Channel. Japanese rider fans and even general audiences took to the show immediately and embraced it. One man in particular, Mano Katsunari, or Katsunari Mano-san if you prefer, was so inspired that he wrote his first, and as far as I can tell, only book. It's a follow-on from the story of Dragon Knight that gives us a little more story. So find a comfortable chair in a quiet corner, click on a lamp, and let's take a look at the Kamen Rider Dragon Knight book, Two Worlds, One Heart. Or Two World, One Hearts.
Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, and make sure you got your notifications set up by hitting that little bell icon. Right you.
What he said was, you can consider checking us out on Patreon or Ko-fi at Orange Ranger Videos.
Right you.
Yeah, that little note about the title there. Japanese to English can always be a little bit tricky, and while Two Worlds, One Heart makes sense, referring to the two worlds of Earth and Ventara, the cover of the book has the title written the other way around. Two World, One Hearts.
I get it.
I don't get it.
A quick little reminder about the way I write and record. I record my scripts the way they're written, and the way they're written is that I write them while I am watching, or in this case reading, what I am reviewing. I had taken a couple of peeks at this translation before, though. I found it posted in a Reddit thread by a user named Flower Stage that posted a link to it. I can't speak to the fact of whether or not they are actually responsible for the translation. And that translation comes off a little bit rough in English. English and Japanese are not grammatically structured the same way, and this seems to be a very literal line-by-line translation. In my little peeks at it, there were various points where I wasn't entirely sure which character was talking. But obviously, if you are watching this video, I found a way to muddle through it. Oh, and in the realm of obvious but being polite, spoiler warning! I am going to assume that you have seen Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, or at least watched my 40 previous reviews of it, so I'm not going to be going in depth on who the returning characters are. I'll only really be expounding on the new characters, and obviously there are going to be spoilers to the Kamen Rider Dragon Knight TV show. Okay, let's ride. The book starts off with a quick synopsis of the show's plot, and then we get this Broadway program-like flowchart of how characters relate to each other. Remember, Maya and JTC relate via betrayal, with no second A between the Y and the L. Then we get this one page of really random concept art. We get Wing Knight and Dragon Knight's bikes, then General Xaviax in his purple alien form, wearing the Void Key belt, and the top and front of the wing cycle.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
The next 3 pages give us a short paragraph on every single character from the show before we finally get into the prologue. Kit, Case, Len, and Ubulon have gathered before a 1-year anniversary celebration of having defeated General Xaviax. In the intervening time, they have defeated almost all of the straggler monsters out there, but there are still a few left, so one rider has to stay on duty while everybody else gets to party. Kit has volunteered for this, sending his father to represent him at the celebration instead. Case teases him about whether it's okay for him to be on his own, but she means well. The two of them, Ubulon was there as well, so it should be the three of them, step into the mirror. No one knew how long that farewell would be. Now we enter the chapters, which are introduced with a full page with the 13 rider logos all around it. Those chapters are then broken down further into named sections. Trouble begins. Kit has made an emergency call to the No Men base, reporting that he's unable to contact Ventara. Arriving at the base, Trent confirms to him that they can't reach Ventara either. Kit attempts to travel to Ventara through a mirror, but immediately returns. He's able to get into the space between, but Ventara itself is blocked off. This concern is set aside momentarily when Kit hears the shimmers and alarms go off at the No Men base. There's an interesting little exchange here. It's in the alley near the intersection of Town Avenue and East 7th Street. I am not a taxi driver. I go by sounds, not street names.
Thanks for your stinking kindness.
Kit pops out of a car window in the alley and sees 3 gecko monsters harassing some cleaners. He kicks them away, transforms, and then uses sword vent, attack vent, and final vent to get rid of the monsters. It's kind of neat how the book works the vents into the story. They're written in a different bold font that's put there after the cards are used. It almost may be able kinda to hear it. Kit gets back to the base to find that Len has returned. He says that he left the party to go get something, which is later said to be pizza, and then ended up stuck on the outside. Does Ventara not have pizza? I mean, if not before, at least now, having interacted with Earth? Michelle implies that Len knows more than he's telling, but he doesn't seem to at the time. There are more alarms. The 2 riders go to leave, but Michelle tells them to minimize damage to Earth by moving the battle into Third Reality, which at the time I was assuming was their name now for the space between. The space between. As the 2 riders transform and leave, a mysterious character enters the No Men base, and their boss, Agent Phillips, apologizes to this person for the delay. Kit and Len pop out of a skyscraper and see a single sheer ghost. Len knows that it can't possibly be this easy, and then more of the monsters pop out of the windows. But Len knows that there are still more hiding around, so he uses Nasty Vent to have Blackwing shriek and draw out even more of the creatures. They get to fighting, one of the monsters takes off, and Kit tackles it through a window, and found themselves on a high roof overlooking the city. It could only be described as general sort of city, a combination of different pieces that barely fit together. Yeah, a city that looks completely mismatched and kit-bashed together. A general sort of city. This is actually Third Reality, the world that Xaviax created to keep Adam and Sarah in. The sheer ghost that Kit tackled screams and then splits open, and one of those dragonfly monsters emerges. And we actually get a name for this thing. The dragonfly evolutions of sheer ghosts are called Ray Dragoons. This particular one taunts Dragon Knight, dive-bombing him and staying out of his sword range. Kit uses his strike vent, but the Ray Dragoon is too fast to get hit by the fireballs. But then it's tackled by Blackwing and then final vented by Wing Knight, who apologizes for being late. The 2 of them return to the No Men base and find an older man standing there. Agent Phillips introduces the 2 to Colonel David Stewart. Stewart says it's nice to meet Mr. Dragon Knight and Mr. Wing Knight. He says that he spoke to Ubulon just the other day, and it's kind of hard for him knowing that Ubulon and the Ventaran Riders are currently trapped in Ventara. Phillips and Michelle explain that Stewart is from the Army's Weapons Division and has come to train both the No Men and the Riders in the spirit, skills, and tactics of professional soldier. Kit and Len are uncertain about this, but they are reminded that Ubulon approved of this plan, so they agree. No Men's decision. Kit paces outside of Grace's books, where he can see Maya working inside, but also see that she's been crying, very clearly upset about Price being trapped in Ventara. He wants to console her, but has no idea what to say. He finally decides to go in, but then collides with a cat and dog mascot heading out of the store, people that Grace had apparently hired for the big opening of the new location. Maya sees this and comes out, and the two of them do talk about how they each are missing their loved ones right now and worried about them, but it's an incredibly awkward conversation, and Maya goes right back inside. Lacey shows up. Oh, good. But apparently the author was just as fond of Lacey as I was. One, Kit mentally comments that she's standing too close to him. And number two, when he mentions Trent and Lacey suddenly mentions that the two of them date Ted, past tense, Kit comments again in his mind, he's not calling Lacey out on this directly, that Lacey's always kind of like this, very suddenly changing the conversation to either dating or fashion. Lacey does say that she will try to talk to Maya, and Kit, in his own words, runs away. We very suddenly cut to Kit and Len transformed and fighting even more monsters. Here the author slips a little bit into perhaps his more familiar terminology, saying that Kit landed yet another Dragon Rider kick. Rider kick is usually the name of a Japanese Kamen Rider finisher, what this show calls a final vent. Anyway, the two talk about how they've been fighting more and more and more monsters lately. They think about looking for a nest when Michelle calls and tells them to come back to the base. The two discuss the situation with Michelle and Colonel Stewart. She agrees that they should go looking for a nest, especially due to the results of the attacks. Here, the story takes a rather sudden shift in tone and does something that the US show never would have been able to do. You see, Zabiacs gained the loyalty of the monsters by feeding them. Now, there's nobody feeding the monsters. So, the monsters are eating humans. She showed them pictures, many pictures, reflections of dismembered corpses and torn body parts.
Excuse me, the did you just say?
Stewart points out that Kit and Len are clearly exhausted, so they're gonna need some help with this. But the Ventaran Riders are trapped on Ventara, so what do? Well, what about the Earth Riders? Okay, that idea is just ridiculous. Besides them not having their memories of being riders anymore, their decks are on Ventara, which we can't get to. So, of course, Colonel Stewart pulls out a case that contains the 11 other rider decks.
That was easy.
Stewart had a long conversation with Ubulon that apparently centered on the life of a warrior, but said that during that conversation he learned that Ubulon had set aside the rider decks for the celebration. Stewart asked to look at them, and Ubulon decided that having him hang on to them during the celebration would be the best way to keep them safe. Trent adds in that Ubulon once told them, off-screen, that if the Earth Riders ever touched the decks again, they would regain their memories. Kit and Len hate this plan. It's dragging the good people that were Earth Riders right back into this fight, and the bad ones, well, that's kind of obvious. Len does come around on the idea though, since they don't seem to have any other options. Trent hopes out loud that JTC won't be brought back in on this, and Len says that that is not something he would ever do. They decide to start with their best friend among the Earth Riders, Chris Ramirez, Kamen Rider Sting. Power of 3. Hey, just like the episode. On a beach near the San Diego Marine Base, remember this, Len and Kit meet with Chris. They contacted him and said they wanted to meet with him because they had knowledge about his past that he couldn't remember. He agreed to the meeting because he realized that, hey, his asthma just all of a sudden cleared up, and that's kind of weird. They ask him to just take the deck and say that he will understand when he does. He waffles on this at first, but when Kit pulls the deck back, Chris says no, he'll take it. He wants those answers. He takes the deck and very painfully has his memories returned to him. They catch him up on what happened after he was vented and ask him, apologetically, to return to the fight. However, he at first refuses, more than happy with his life as it is right now. Then Colonel Stewart approaches, and that gets Chris's attention. Chris kind of fanboys over Stewart, who was apparently a hero during the Second War in Afghanistan. For his part, Stewart talks up the three of them, riders who have faced off against actual monsters to defend the entire planet. Stewart then says Chris's dad, Daniel Ramirez, is a true hero and a great Marine, and the Ramirez family is a very important part of the U.S. Army.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
So, there's two different ways that this can be wrong. The author either got a show detail wrong or a military detail. I would imagine the military detail being Japanese, but anyway. The show detail is that Chris's entire thing about wanting to be a Marine is that his family, going back 4 generations, were Marines, not Army. But some of you will say the Marines aren't actually their own armed force, right? Aren't they considered a department of something? Yes, the Marines are considered officially to be a department of the Navy, not the Army. My stepdad, may he rest in peace, always liked to joke that it's the men's department of the Navy. Anyway, with Stewart, Chris's hero, here asking him to do this, he can't make himself say no. But now that he has made that decision, he does say that it's probably for the best. He feels like that his original reasons for being a Kamen Rider were selfish. He had just been discharged from the Marines and just wanted to do something that would make his father proud of him. Now he can fight for the right reasons. He pulls out that bundle of 3 sticks that Len gave him in that episode to demonstrate the power of teamwork, saying that he always kept it even when he couldn't remember what it was. For his part, Len doesn't actually remember that. Not that sentimental a guy, I guess. Chapter 2, Steel and Crab. Kit and Len meet with Brad Barrett, Kamen Rider Thrust, who very quickly refuses them. I'm guessing that he never did get that evidence back from Xaviax because his old team would not hire him back. He caught on as a spare rider for a far weaker team, and even in that situation is on a 1-year prove-it kind of a contract, so he can't spare them any time. They ask if he might join up with them after the season, but he says that's 6 months away. They tell him to hang on to the deck just in case he gets attacked by any monsters, but he refuses and kicks them out. But they slide the deck under the door to him, just in case. Len and Kit meet up with Agent Phillips in a parking lot and explain about Brad's refusal. Then Richie Preston, Kamen Rider Incisor, walks up, saying that if they aren't customers or guests, then they need to go. And I really love Agent Phillips' tack here. He doesn't say a single word. He just walks up and shoves the deck into Richie's hand. The memories come flooding back to him, but a really nice thing the author does is that Richie's memories coming back really doesn't help with much. Remember, Richie was vented pretty quickly, so they kind of have to explain things to him from the very beginning. Richie has genuinely changed for the better. He says that even in his rich days, he really just wanted friends so he wouldn't be lonely, but those people only used him for his money. Zabiax didn't make up the part about his dad cutting him off. That actually happened, so when he was returned to his life, he was still cut off. He ended up landing a job valeting cars at a hotel, and he really likes it and the people that he works with. He expresses remorse that he hurt people trying to make money, but he says that when he was vented, he regretted taking the deal in the first place, and he's not going to risk doing that again. Agent Phillips doesn't take the deck back, but they do leave. Kit asks Len to go talk to Grant Staley, Kamen Rider Camo, while he goes to talk to Drew Lansing, Kamen Rider Torque. Doubtless Chameleon. We see Grant in a boxing match, and there's a pretty strong implication that he still cheats. Red open finger glove landed on the Green Man's temple. He folded onto his knees, fell forward, and hit the floor. Kinda sounds like he's still packing his gloves. He drinks in the crowd's adulation and then heads to the locker room, where Len is waiting for him. He attacks and they fight for a bit. Len then slides the deck over to him, saying that there's a gap in his memory. Grant admits that there's stuff that he can't remember. One moment he was defeating his sensei in a fight. The next he was standing on the street with no idea how he got there. Stop me if this starts to sound familiar, but after taking the deck and getting his memories back, he turns Len down, and then Colonel Stewart shows up to change his mind. He says that as a soldier, he knows that it's not fame that Grant is after. It's the burning thrill of battle. He tells Grant that as a rider, he can really let loose and face the kind of opponent that human opposition cannot provide him. And that changes his mind. The next part isn't partitioned off like you with those stars, like you see books use sometimes, or a subchapter title, just a location caption, prison near Los Angeles, and the book actually does this a few more times. Kit and Agent Phillips go to meet Drew at what is very painstakingly described as a low security prison. Drew comes out and tries to claim that he's innocent of what he was charged. Then he drops that act, but says that being in prison like this is still something of an overreaction. Phillips cuts to the chase and tosses the torque deck onto the table. And Drew immediately goes into his salesman act. Well, is this a toy? Are you going to sell it? What is the target demography? Oh! Kit gets ready to tell Drew off, but Phillips jumps in and is really tired of doing this the slow way. Listen, Drew, you used to own this deck. It has your memories in it. You can take it and get out of jail, or reject us and spend another 20 years in here. Kit doesn't like the idea of making deals with people just the way that Zabiax did, but Phillips is really over this at this point. Drew does take the deck, immediately remembering his rivalry with Kit. He's disappointed to hear that Zabiax is gone now, but does take the deal to get out of jail. Even as Phillips says afterwards that they'll be watching him very closely, and if he does anything wrong, he'll be right back inside. Back over to Richie. We see him parking some cars in his job, and then afterwards a coworker asks him to go get some drinks with some of the other coworkers. But at the bar, Richie can now see monsters in every reflective surface. He even slaps a drink out of someone's hand after seeing a monster in the glass. He leaves with the excuse that he lives in a bad neighborhood now, so he has to get home before dark. An older coworker approaches for what Richie says is going to be a grandpa lecture.
I used to rule this planet when it was underwater.
Ian tells Richie that in this life, There are 4 things.
Keep your shirt tucked in, go down with the ship, and never abandon a member of your crew.
No, Captain Janeway, that's only 3 things. The 4 things are, apparently, I do something because I can, I want to do it, but I can't, I don't want to do it because I can't. I think that one is more like I don't want to do it and can't do it anyway. And I don't do it because I don't want to. Again, I think that's I can do it, but I don't want to. So, to try and make that a little clearer, I do it because I can, I want to do it, but I can't, I don't want to do it and can't do it anyway, and I can do it, but I don't want to do it.
What are you talking about?
Anyway, Ian says that as he's grown older, he has realized there is actually a 5th thing. It's something I don't want to do, but have to do. He tells a story about a man named Eagle that worked at a car dealership that he owned. Eagle was a great salesman, but then got involved in the stock market without having any idea what he was doing and lost all of his money. To make up those funds, he started embezzling from the dealership. Ian found out about this, but couldn't bring himself to do anything about it. Those embezzled funds ended up bankrupting the company. Probably not directly. I don't imagine that he would have embezzled enough money to do that. That doesn't seem very smart. It's pretty easily traceable, but it probably took enough money that it impacted other business practices in any way. Ian's wife actually left him over this and took their child with her. He begs Richie to take action on whatever he's clearly thinking about, but doesn't want to do. Office of Team Gold Rangers. Okay, really now. Try to convince me that that's not a little Easter egg. Anyway, this is the name of the team that Brad is on now. The young owner of the team is reading Brad the riot act because he was lost in thought and missed the starting signal of a race. Brad says that that's all it was, a momentary lapse in concentration, but the owner says this is not the first time this has happened. He missed a turn, he said that he couldn't sleep and that's why he was late, he forgot what time the meeting began. I really love this part. The owner starts getting angrier at Brad because he thinks he's looking at him defiantly. Brad wasn't actually feeling defiant. That was just the default expression of his face. In other words, the author is pointing out that Brad has a resting bitch face. After a good 20-minute rant, the owner tells Brad that this is his last chance. He leaves, taking out the thrust deck, throwing it on the ground, and stomping on it, to no effect, of course. Ever since he got the deck back, he hears the alarms and sees the monsters. And that's driving him up the wall. He gets on his bike and just wildly rides straight down the road, ending up in a neighborhood. He can see the reflection of a monster in his own bike's gas tank. So, he uses the deck to transform, becoming Kamen Rider Thrust once again. He drags the monster out through the gas tank, using his strike vent to nearly stab the thing to death, then his final vent to finish the deal. Chapter 3, First Victim. We are at the story's halfway point here. In Third Reality, Camo is fighting against a monkey monster and defeats it with the help of Biogriza. He calls into the No Men to report his victories and asks Trent what the monster scoreboard says. Trent points out that there is no monster scoreboard. He powers down and he's about to leave when Kamen Rider Incisor shows up. I guess Richie changed his mind as well. Or did he? Incisor attacks Grant. Grant is all too eager to fight another rider and transforms again. However, Camo can't land any of his attacks, and Incisor is calling them out before he does them. Camo uses his clear vent to disappear, but Incisor knows exactly where he's going to move to. Incisor finally reveals that he knows all of this because they've had this fight once before. Incisor then rewound time using a time vent card. He apologizes but says that he can't allow Grant to leave the ring, and uses his final vent. Grant is vented again. Doubt and confusion. So, adding to the murkiness of all this, it turns out that Richie did change his mind, showing up late to a Rider meeting after his job went late. They tell him that they can't get in touch with Camo, and more importantly, they're not getting a signal from his deck, meaning that he's likely been vented. Stewart says that there are 3 possibilities for this. 1, an unknown type of monster that's strong enough to actually vent a Kamen Rider. 2, a Ventaran assassin, a concept that's first brought up here and honestly, to my memory, never mentioned again in the rest of the story. Or 3, a traitor among the Riders. Hey, it turns out Adam isn't even here. Spoilers, Adam isn't even in this story at all.
And the aptly named Sir not appearing in this film.
Of course, this gets Drew, Brad, and Richie all up in each other's grills. Kit and Chris try to calm things down, but Drew storms off saying that he'll do things his own way. He rides over to a Mexican pub where he has a Corona. I'll have a Bellini, thanks. Kit walks in and Drew asks if he was following him, but he says that no, he just decided to go for a ride and he saw that Drew was here and decided to stop in and have a seat. He orders a ginger ale and a chili dog and asks Drew if he thinks there's really a traitor amongst the Riders. This is one of those areas in the story where the translation starts to make things really kind of fuzzy, but basically Drew says that he knows that everyone thinks that he's the traitor, but he insists that he isn't. Yes, he and JTC worked for Xaviax, but now Drew just wants to have an ordinary, good, normal life. He tells Kit once again that he is not Judas. Words of the story. And hey, at least he's gonna live, because it's the traitors that always lose, right? Crueler than fate. Wing Knight and Sting beat up some monsters, but then get a call from Brad that he's found a nest. But then those monsters spot him, and he calls out for help. Agent Phillips tells everyone to go help Brad, to Drew's irritation. However, they can't reach Richie. The 5 Riders meet up in a third reality forest, rescuing Brad. Torque uses his final bent with the to destroy a whole bunch of the monsters, and then the 5 Riders actually work together really well to take out the remainder. They head back to the base where Stewart reprimands Brad for going out alone and trying to take out that nest. He wasn't even on nest scouting duty. Brad's really tired of getting ranted at today, so he leaves. Chris goes after him and tries to make him feel better, but the two of them end up getting in an argument, transforming and using mirrors to head to third reality to fight each other. Sting and Thrust start fighting, but then Torque hops in and starts firing, wanting to join this little party as well. But then the 3 of them get shot at by Torque. Another Torque. The 3 Earth Riders start working together to try to beat this copy, but it's no good. They freeze Torque's final vent and then blast him away. Sting and Thrust fire off their final vents, but the copy uses Confined Vent on Evil Diver, which knocks Sting down into the path of Metal Jealous. Sting is vented, and then the copy uses Copy Vent to make a copy of Metal Jealous. Torque climbs out of the wreckage, and this is a really nice deep cut here. His armor is no longer green, it's now faded black and gray. Magnu Giga was destroyed in that attack. Torque no longer has an Advent Beast. Torque no longer has a contract. So even though the book doesn't name this, this is Kamen Rider blank Torque. It doesn't really matter as he gets vented a few moments later anyway. Thrust also gets vented, and another Torque, for lack of a better term, takes the 3 decks and fades away. Chapter 4, Brothers in Arms. Basically, everyone left has gathered up at the bookstore, shocked and saddened. I mean, everyone. Maya is there. Lacey is there. Kit is in grief. Chris did not want to rejoin this battle. He basically forced Brad and Drew to take their decks back. Now all three of them are in the Advent Void again. Maya tries to console Kit by reminding him of how he consoled her, saying that Price is going to be fine. He snaps that one of those things has nothing to do with the other, before stepping back and apologizing. Michelle then barges in and tells Kit to suck it up. Seriously, Kit, I understand your feelings, but we can't sit around being sad. Kit asks if she feels anything about Chris being vented, but she barges straight into the next topic, and it's a doozy. They're bringing the Cho brothers back in. What? That's right, Kamen Rider Axe and Kamen Rider Spear. Kit can't believe this, but they really don't have another choice. The only other riders that they could possibly hope to bring in at this point are Siren and Wrath, via Case's Earth counterpart, and Vic, but they can't seem to track either of them down. They even ask Kit if he has their DNA in his medical records. Why would Kit have their DNA? Kit storms off, and apparently Lacey decided that this was the best time in the world to remind Trent that she's asked him out again. And he rightly tells her, now is not the time.
Shut up! As in, close your mouth and stop talking.
Agent Phillips and Len find the two brothers stealing a bike, kind of just like when Zabiax met them. They talk about the entire situation, and the brothers, of course, turn everything down and even try to shake Phillips down, but Len beats them up pretty easily and once again calls them amateurs. He forces the decks into their hands, and they very painfully get their memories back. Phillips lighting up a cigarette as they do, something else that they couldn't do on the children's show. With their memories back, Phillips offers them the reward of stable government employment in return for helping out with the Rider situation. Their response is to run in opposite directions. They meet up deeper into a warehouse, and we see that the two of them have also thankfully turned the page. A little girl finds them and knows who they are, and they give her a box of cereal intended for her and several other children. Albert seems to be thinking about joining up with the Kamen Riders, especially since their part of town has been seeing a lot more gang activity lately. But this upsets Danny, and he storms off, right into Danger Gang territory, and their notorious leader, Bean. Bean finds them pretty immediately, showing off the muscles made with bodybuilding and drugs. The two are beaten up and given a choice: join the Danger Gang or leave the city. The gang leaves, and the two brothers realize that really, there's only one option. Simple battle. Richie's coworker Cam asks him to go out for drinks again, but he turns him down this time, tired from another job. He leaves to get on the bus, but sees a shadowy figure in a window reflection, and after asking if they could just please leave him out of this, he leaps through the window. He is confronted by Kamen Rider Sting.
I think it's very nice of you to give that dead woman another chance.
Richie transforms and the two fight. Sting spends the entire time narrating to Richie about his own deck. The defensive power is Incisor's best quality. It allows for close combat and simple tactics. Wonderful. Finally, Sting uses Copy Vent, turning himself into another Incisor. The Copy uses the Strike and Shield vents to whack Incisor and send him flying off a tall building. He is vented when he lands, and another deck gets claimed. Meanwhile, the Cho brothers are on what's basically a gang version of house arrest. Albert keeps prodding Danny that they should use the decks, even screaming at one point that if he wants to murder Bean using the power of the Kamen Riders, that's his decision. Jessica, the little girl that they gave the cereal to, asks them if everything's okay, and the two of them eventually decide to leave the house. She gives them sandwiches that she made with the very last food they had, since she noticed that they haven't been eating lately. Aww. Venomous deed. Yeah, you may have seen this coming. Back down to just Kit and Len with no sign of Siren or Wrath. There's only one rider left for them to go get. Kamen Rider Strike. And Kamen Rider Strike means JTC. You remember how in the finale video for the story of the show, I said that I really hoped that JTC would have had a positive ending after everything? Yeah, about that. We're told that JTC's final battle against Wing Knight broke his mind. And when he came back from the Advent Void, he was basically cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They put him in a psych ward, and he basically spends his entire time there rambling incoherently about his family. Len takes the deck to go get him, but Philip stops him. Seeing as JTC is where he is right now because of Len, it would probably be a better idea if Kit went to go get him. Kit, for his part, refuses because bringing back JTC would hurt Maya. No real mention of the fact that Trent specifically said out loud that he hoped JTC wouldn't come back. Len says that right now the riders are serving under the direction of the No Men and Colonel Stewart, so this is an order and he has to obey. Kit turns to Phillips and says that the riders are not just his tools. Phillips says that he knows this, but he's not sorry to give this order. Hate him. Heck, hit him. But you might want to save that energy for the monsters out there. Kit just silently takes the strike deck and leaves. Kit heads to the psych ward and goes to what is clearly a wing intended for more dangerous patients, as it's pointed out that there are guards there with guns. He goes into JTC's room and, yeah, he's not entirely there. Kit tells him that they're friends that used to play with each other using the strike deck. But James says that he doesn't remember this. He just wants to know where his dad is and says that Billy, his brother, I'm assuming that he talked about on the show, isn't there. Kit says that he's going to step out and get James an orange juice, setting the strike deck on the table next to his bed. When Kit comes back in, James appears to be asleep, but then goes, "Kit Taylor," and says it's been a long time. The book then says that James gets up, walks over to Kit, and takes the deck. 1, Kit left the deck on the table next to the bed, and 2, the only way that James would remember who Kit is if he had already picked the deck up and gotten his memories back. Anyway, James asks Kit why he came, but Kit refuses to answer the question. James actually says that he'll go along anyway. He'll be able to use the power of the riders and the No Men to change the world in his favor. He then asks Kit how Maya's doing. That really pisses him off, but James just laughs as they leave through a mirror. Back at the No Men base, Trent has apparently gotten over his aversion to the idea of including JTC in all this, briefing him on the situation when an alarm goes off. There are 2 attacks going on at the same time. Len at first steps up to Kit, but then JTC steps over to Kit, saying that bats can handle themselves. Len says this is fine, it's not worth arguing over, so they do it this way. Kit and JTC arrive near some elevators and find a couple of Ray Dragoons. Kit says that they should split them up, but JTC wants to place a bet on which of them can defeat both first. Kit rejects this, the 2 of them transform, and basically vent the monsters at just about the same time, though JTC was technically first. They get back to the base, and we learn that they're actually keeping JTC in a locked room when they're not fighting. JTC agreed to this on one condition. He gets a computer. The No Men agreed to that on 3 conditions. That he makes no physical copies of what he looks at, he keeps being a writer his first priority, and he keeps his own personal curiosity under check. Trent's phone chimes, and looking at where the message came from, he looks over at JTC, and then back at his phone. He says nothing's wrong, but he breaks out in a cold sweat. Burning determination. Danny and Albert are running through the city, not even able to find anything good to steal anymore. Guess LA's really having some gang trouble in this story. They run into the Danger Gang, who chase them into a parking lot that they can't get out of. They are cornered. It looks like they're done for, but then monsters pop out of reflective surfaces and grab all the gang members. They've been saved! But Albert says that they should go and try to help them. It could win them brownie points with a very powerful gang. They transform and head through. I think the writer kind of lampshades the show's tendency to not always match up source footage very well, as they go through reflective surfaces in a parking lot on Earth at night and end up in an industrial area during the day. The story points this out. They find Bean. Or rather, they find Bean's hand. Nearby, there's a monster eating the rest of Bean. Be careful though, monster. I hear that eating beans can make you toot. The two fight the monsters and use their final vents. Albert's hits a gas tank and sets off a chain of explosions that they have to run away from. Once they're safe, they realize the Danger Gang is going to think that the two of them killed Bean and have hidden the body. They're now in more trouble than they ever were before. Nice job being heroes, guys. Fang and Pride. A few days later, we see that JTC has been a good boy, cooperating and even gathering data for the No Men. He reports to them that the monsters seem to be migrating, moving from an initial nesting site at the edge of the city closer into downtown. They quickly realize that the monsters are getting near to Dodger Stadium, and there's going to be a baseball game there in 2 days, so this is something that they need to get on. Trent pulls JTC aside and asks to speak to him privately, which he agrees to. An alarm goes off, but he then refuses to go and fight, saying that he's tired and he deserves to have a break now and then. When Kit and Len leave, JTC admits to Trent that he actually didn't go because he wanted to hear what Trent had to say. He gets some coffee from the break room. Trent asks him about that ding on his phone from a couple days before, which it turns out was an email from James with information that's very difficult for Trent to believe. JTC says that if Trent doesn't have any trust left in his heart for James Trademore, that's fine. But if he has any admiration, respect, trust left for the hacker, JTC, he needs to believe this and keep it to himself. He also needs to look out for snakes in the grass, but James does say that when he gets the chance, he should share this information just with Kit. He then invites Trent to go take a walk. Apparently, Trent either didn't go on that walk or left very quickly, because next we see Strike transformed, watching Wing Knight and Dragon Knight via a mirror. Suddenly, he sees another form in the mirror, and that's another Wing Knight. JTC addresses this form as the Rider Hunter, saying he knows that this person can copy other riders. That's the only way they'd be able to take so many of them out. James says that this person may be dealing with 3 very tired Kamen Riders and possibly also the Cho brothers. But that does still mean that they have to hurry before the connection to Ventara can be reestablished. Rider Hunter says, that's fine. Nobody trusts Strike. And the Chos are useless anyway. Strike thinks he's ready for anything, but then feels a sharp pain in his back. It turns out that the Rider Hunter used Trick Vent and had his copy sneak around behind him, through the mirror, I guess, to stab him in the back. Strike is vented by this, and Rider Hunter claims another deck. Back at the base, Kit is despondent, since Strike has now been missing for about half a day. Then a mirror ripples, and the Cho brothers show up. They're brought up to date on the whole situation, but still refuse to join up, despite how desperate the situation now is. There are only 4 active Kamen Riders: Dragon Knight, Wing Knight, Axe, and Spear, and 3 decks that they can't use: Onyx, Siren, and Wrath. As far as Onyx, once again, I don't know why Adam is not involved in this story in any way. My only guess would be is that the end of his story involved him not wanting to be a writer anymore, and the writer deciding to honor that?
Who knows? Not me. Who cares? Ditto, Mark.
The two are offered a direct financial reward this time, but they don't care and head back through the mirror. I'm not really sure why they bothered to show up in the first place. Trent pulls Kit aside and gives him an envelope saying that it's something that JTC had entrusted to him. He reveals to Kit that JTC worked for Xaviax because, as he told Danny Albert, one of the Cho brothers, his brother was unjustly imprisoned. Trent also gives him the warning to watch out for snakes in the grass, though I will point out that the author just keeps calling them grass snakes. Maybe that's the way the Japanese say it. Chapter 5, For Someone, and there are 10 pages left in the story. The Cho brothers have gone back to their house that has a lot of kids in it, like an unofficial foster home. They quickly get tired of having to entertain the children, but the kids rarely get to see them, so they don't want to go to sleep. But the brothers then hear the mirror shimmers and tell all of the kids to go to bed, leaving the second oldest in charge because Jessica is getting a break. In an old TV set, they see a red monster holding Jessica hostage. They transform and head in, landing in yet another industrial factory type setting. Maybe another lampshade from the author. They eventually find Wing Knight, maybe the Rider Hunter? And he reveals that he is in control of the monsters that are holding Jessica hostage. They threaten to vent him, but they can't actually do anything while Jessica's being held hostage. Wing Knight goes survive mode and vents the two. Interestingly, after this, there's a moment where the monster holding Jessica grumbles in complaint, comparing Wing Knight's face to Jessica's when Wing Knight powers down. So they tell the monster to get lost, and it does so, taking Jessica along. Crimes of Over-Survive. Elsewhere, Kit confronts Len, asking what he did to the Cho brothers. He at first feigns confusion, but then transforms, Kit also transforming, and the two starting to fight. As they fight, Wing Knight confesses that he is not Len. His name is Brian Mace. Len is still trapped on Ventara. Brian is the Earth version of Len. Brian says that Kit must be upset to have been fooled, but Kit says actually, it's a relief. For a minute there, Kit did think that Len was the traitor, but then there were some clues that suggested this wasn't actually Len. And guess what? The pizza was one of the clues. Len said that he left Ventara to come back to Earth to get pizza. Len wouldn't have needed to leave Ventara to get pizza. There is also the matter that Len didn't remember Chris's bundle of sticks, which was a very important moment for Len as well as Chris. A voice laughs from the shadows, congratulating Mr. Dragon Knight on his memory. He steps out, and it's Colonel Stewart. This isn't a surprise to Kit either, as this is what JTC told Trent and what Trent told Kit. Colonel Stewart is not in the Army's Defense Weapons Department. Colonel Stewart retired several years ago. Kit also knew that someone else was the Rider Hunter, not the person pretending to be Len, as when Drew ducked away before getting vented, he called Kit and left him a voicemail that whoever their secret opponent was had the ability to turn into other riders. So it's time for Stewart to give his big villains monologue, laying out all of his motivations and the whole plan and the whole situation and everything. After seeing action in Afghanistan and Kuwait and Iraq, Stewart came to believe that America was the only good nation on the planet and therefore should be running the planet. That distrust extends to other planets too. Stewart is not good friends with Ubulon. They only said a few words to each other, and it's implied that it was an argument. Stewart doesn't trust that the Ventarans won't one day use the power of the Kamen Riders to invade Earth and take it over. So he arranged to get the decks away from the riders during the celebration and plans to combine them into some kind of greater power that he'll use to take over Earth. Kit refuses to cooperate with any of this, so Stewart takes out the Onyx deck. Kit points out that he can't really use the Onyx deck, but Stewart says, "Oh, how wrong you are. All these fights that the Earth Riders have been using have been gathering battle data about the decks, and they've managed now to remove the DNA locks. They've now created the strongest core, CORPS. Stewart transforms into Onyx, then uses Copy Vent to turn into Torque. Yes, Stewart is the Rider Hunter. He powers up Shoot Vent pointed at Kit and at Brian. Brian protests, but Stewart says that nobody that knows about his plan can survive. He's going to claim that the Rider decks were developed by the U.S. Army, so anybody who knows where they really come from has to go. It is sad that Brian has to die, but that's a sacrifice he's willing to make.
And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is.
The two of them are blasted, but Dragon Knight used his shield vent to protect them both. He's given up on giving up and is going to fight for the world the same way that Chris fought for his country. Rider Hunter turns back into Onyx and berates Kit. The way of things is that soldiers sacrifice civilians for the greater good, not playing the clip again, and that's the way it has to be. Kit won't back down, not gonna play that clip either, so Rider Hunter uses a card called Steel Vent. This card apparently allows a rider to use another rider's card, and it turns out that he's got the Survive card. Kit quickly checks his deck, and his Survive card is still in there. It's not Dragon Knight's Survive card, it's Wing Knight's. Brian apologizes, saying that he gave the card to Stewart before he knew about any of his true plans. Stewart claims that Brian has betrayed him. Brian was just a bouncer at some shady dead-end nightclub, and Stewart gave him the chance to be a real American hero. Brian says that he took the opportunity to fight against terrorism, not to make the United States into a military world-conquering empire, and damn, this is hitting really close to home right now.
The United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury.
Onyx activates Survive mode. Yeah, that's right. There's unfortunately no image of it from this book. This book is not illustrated, so I don't really have an image to show you. Though, if you do take a quick look on Google, there's conceptualizations of all of the riders in Survive mode, even just from the time of the show. But yeah, Stewart activates Onyx Survive mode. He summons Drag Blacker, who starts blowing the factory they're in to shreds. The two of them escape the factory, but Onyx chases after them. Kit goes Survive mode, they run across some grasslands near the factory and then start fighting, but Onyx has the upper hand, even knocking Kit back out of Survive mode. Stewart goes completely off of his meds, calling himself the patriotic hero who was chosen by God. The knights are both down and everything seems lost when a nearby window in the grasslands shimmers and people start walking out of it. Chris tells Stewart to honor the U.S. military and stop this. Brad tells Stewart that if he cheats, he'll lose down the home stretch. The Cho brothers say that they were surprised, but they're now ready to get revenge for him kidnapping Jessica. Drew is there. JTC is there. Everybody's back. As are Case and Ubulon and Len. Len and Brian meet, and Brian is ashamed about what he's done, but insists that he didn't know that Stewart was evil and he only ever hurt riders. Len understands and tells him to go rest. Stewart shakes his head and says there's no way that his space jamming tech would have failed this soon. But Ubulon points out that that technology was based on his technology, and the modification was shoddy and easy to break. That pisses Stewart off but good, but Len, Chris, Brad, Grant, Drew, Richie, JTC, Danny, Albert, Case, and Vic face off against Stewart Onyx. 12 riders facing this ultimate challenge. Stewart goes megalomaniacal. I will not give up. It is like a Christmas morning, but in a desert, surrounded by gorillas and terrorists. I'm not sure that statement made sense even in Japanese. Stewart pulls Steel Vent again and uses it, getting Dragon Knight's Survive Mode card. The riders and Ubulon beg him not to use it. The rider system was not designed to use 2 survive modes at the same time. So of course Stewart does it anyway, transforming into a fire tornado that reveals a big, bulky dragon-themed suit that is red and gold, but stained with black as if hit with tar. The riders attack, but he's able to just flash around from place to place and dodge them. Even when they score a hit, it barely seems to register. He grabs Torque and swings him around like a mace, knocking everyone else down. He drops the section title, dubbing this Over Survive. Len and Case thrust their blades directly into him at once, and it does nothing. He keeps throwing them around, literally. He then showcases an ability to use multiple cards at the same time. He uses Trick Vent, Shoot Vent, and Sword Vent to make 5 copies of himself that each have a sword and a gun. The copies beat the riders back and down. He grabs Kit, saying that Kit burned his hands. I'm not really sure what he's referring to, but he beats him down for it. The others dive in to try to help Kit, but a 2-headed dragon dives in to stop them. Drag Black Redder? Ubulon apparently also transformed. The story only mentions the 11 riders transforming, but Ubulon checks his Void Key, which here is called the Advent Key, and sees that after using it to get the Earth Riders again and fighting now, he's running a little low on power. Onyx attacks Kit again, but he gets a second wind, activating his final vent and landing it on Onyx to absolutely no effect. Stewart laughs maniacally, about to finish Kit off, when he collapses and things start exploding. So, did Kit's final vent actually manage to get through? No. It's just like Ubulon said, the rider system is not designed for 2 survive modes. So Stewart powers down, and no, it's terrible for him. He's lost. He's not going to get his dream of an American nation that dominates the world militarily. He's probably going to federal prison for this. Oh, heroes, it's so much worse than that. The monsters run onto the battlefield and start running right at Stewart. He tries to hold up contract cards with them, but they turn to ash in his hands. Kit, ever the hero, tries to help, but there's just too many monsters. They surround Stewart and eat him! Blood-curdling screams rose from the center of the monster whirlpool, with the sounds of meat being ripped from the bone and blood being splattered on the ground.
Excuse me, what?
I do like that Kit points out that, well, that's what happens when you try to screw over too many people at one time. And Drew tells him to either throw up or shut up. Nightmare. The riders celebrate the fall and consumption of Stewart, but they're still in trouble. The monsters don't stop with him. They start swarming around, consuming each other, and grow into this giant 30-foot tall monster. And the riders don't have a Megazord, so this is a problem. They try fighting it, but not even their final vents can hurt the thing. It just keeps healing off all the damage because of the life force of the monsters inside. Ubulon then pulls the answer right out of his Karshian backside. He tells Kit to use XR. Kit rightly says, "What the fudge is XR?" XR is the combination of Onyx and Dragon Knight's powers. Adam is once again not there to use the Onyx deck, and it's never established why Adam is not there, but Ubulon points out that the decks have been unlocked, so there is someone around that can use the Onyx deck. Brian. Brian tries to say no, guilty about his part in all of this, but Kit reminds him that he originally did this to protect his country, and that brings him around. He transforms, and they fire up their final vents together. This, apparently, is the power of XR, a combined final vent called Crimson Kick. It burns straight through to the heart of the monster and blows it up. Kind of an anticlimax, to being honest about it. Brian formally apologizes to the writers for everything he did, and they mostly forgive him. Danny almost punches him, but since Jessica is okay, he says that's enough. JTC does step on his foot, kind of a token punishment.
The epilogue!
That's right, epilogue. 3 days later, Kit is thinking about everything that's happened. All of the Earthriders did have to have their memories wiped again, even if they were being put back into unstable conditions. Because at least this time, the No Men are stepping in to try to make things better. Richie and Brad get to keep their jobs, and Drew and JTC were released from their confinement. To Kit's sadness, Chris also had to have his memory wiped, but he's actually just fine with that. Really just wanting to get back to his life of being a Marine. He does say that if he and Kit ever meet out in the real world, they can still be friends. The Venturan Riders are now back in and out of No Men HQ, and it's bustling with activity, but there's something still worrying Kit, and he goes to talk to Ubulon about it. There's no way that Stewart was acting alone. Ubulon agrees. He needed documents for his cover story. He needed help with the technology. There are likely others in the US military and even just elsewhere that don't trust the Venturans. But Ubulon points out that Kit is living proof that peace can exist between the two worlds. Just a quick little editing note for any of you who happen to still be around at this point in the video. I record my audio into the computer on my microphone using Windows Sound Recorder. As it turns out, Sound Recorder has a 3-hour limit that I was unaware of, so at this point it stopped recording my microphone audio. Thankfully, the onboard microphone on my camera is working, so I did have some audio for the rest of the video. I will make that as good as I possibly can. On with the show. The story ends on a gag as Len invites Kit to have breakfast with him and Case, but Kit says he already has plans with his father and Maya for his birthday. Kit then asks Case if she cooks, and she says that she can buy groceries and make omelets. Kit then jokes to Len that it sounds like he'll be having boiled eggs for breakfast. Surprise! Straight into the cards. Episode Book. 2 worlds, 1 heart. Pros. Character focus is shifted to smaller characters. There are some exciting battles, and a better resolution. Cons. Beloved characters get the shaft. This is basically published fanfiction, and as unfair as this may be, the translation gets in the way. I could see this being an episode or even a movie for the show, but really just barely. 2 worlds, 1 heart gets 3.5 cards out of 5. A clear intention of this story was shifting focus away from characters that got a lot of focus to characters that didn't get so much focus. One of the main characters of this story is Richie, a character that got about maybe a single episode worth of total time on the show. Here, he grows from the spoiled rich kid to a hard worker that also cares about others. The Cho brothers also got a lot of positive growth and development themselves. It's kind of nice to see shorter-lived characters get a little more meat. Not the kind that the monsters eat, though. There are some really nice fights in this story. Another clear intention of the story was seeing riders that didn't fight each other on the show fight here, like Rider Hunter taking out Camo as Incisor. The battles are exciting and the writing really showcases the huge stakes and the big action. And one thing that this book does do better than the show is think a little bit more about its ending. The reveal that Stewart clearly wasn't working alone is obviously a sequel hook that I don't think ever caught the sequel fish, but we did find out where most of the characters ended up this time, and they seem to have happier endings than they did the first time. The flip side of shafted characters getting more focus is that characters that got more focus and tend to be beloved because of that kind of get shafted. The main person in my mind for this is Chris Ramirez, Kamen Rider Sting. He gets a really nice scene at the beginning of the story getting convinced to join the fight, and then he gets vented almost immediately. Being honest, we have characters like Kamen Rider Camo that get shafted both times, but yeah, in general, we have some beloved characters that we just don't get a lot of in this story. While this is the second con, it really is kind of the overall prevailing thought that kind of sums up all the things I have against this story, but while this is a published book in Japan, it's very clearly fan fiction. The prevailing thought for the inspiration of the story seems to be, wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool if Incisor fought Camo? Wouldn't it be cool if Onyx had a survive mode and then combined that survive mode with Dragon Knight survive mode? Wouldn't it be cool if Dragon Knight and Onyx used their final vents at the same time? Yes, it's all cool, but at times it just kind of feels like the book isn't taking things quite as seriously as the show did. And yes, even in saying the con, I admitted this, that this is not fair. I really shouldn't hold this against the story itself, but I can really only speak to my own experience, and reading this story in English, the story suffers for its translation. There are some badly misspelled words, and then there's stuff that just doesn't make any sense. Like Kay saying she can make omelets, and Kit joking to Len that he's gonna be eating boiled eggs. Maybe that's supposed to be burnt eggs? Overall though, this was a nice story. Getting more of Richie and a positive ending for JTC makes this one worth a read. And that's it. That wraps up the Kamen Rider Dragon Knight reviews. And that means it's time for me to mention something. I have been the Orange Ranger for over 10 years across all of my platforms. Occasionally I do talk about other things, but it always feels like a little bit of a betrayal when I do, because I'm the Orange Ranger. So it's time for a rebranding. I'm not ready to give out all the details about that just yet, but I will tell you two things. Number one, don't worry, Power Rangers is always my first love, and it's always going to have a place on this channel. Number two, the next time you see a video on this channel, things are going to look very different. Oh, and number three, that is probably going to take a little bit of time, probably about another month or so. For the moment, my focus is now going to go to hopping over to Orange Ranger Plays and finishing up my Let's Play of Chrono Trigger. So come and join me over there. I'd love for some of you on this channel to hop over to that channel and see what I'm doing with the Vigi games. Well, no, Mariah, okay. I have a great idea. Thank you so much to those of you who have seen this series through literal years to get to the end of these reviews. I have some incredibly dedicated fans, and I appreciate each and every one of you more than you can possibly know. And my thanks to Stephen Ford, Matt Mullins, the rest of the cast, even Lacey's actress, and Adness Entertainment for creating a tokusatsu adaptation that proved that you can make a serious, compelling story out of this kind of material. So, that is going to wrap up not just the last Kamen Rider Dragon Knight review, but in a manner of speaking, the last Orange Ranger video. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Now, the channel is still going to be here, so you can still like this video by hitting the thumbs up button down below. In the comments, let me know what you thought of this series. I had some people leave their thoughts on the series on the last video, which makes sense because it was the end of the show, but also the book. Have you read the book on your own, either in Japanese or English? If you have read this book in Japanese, I would love for you to tell me if it makes any more sense. I mean, I got a general sense of what the story was, but the things that were confusing, do they make sense in Japanese? Let me know down in the comments below. If this is your first exposure to the story, what did you think of it? I just told you the story, so let me know what you think down in the comments below, but also the entire run of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, make sure you're following, check me out on social medias, Blue Sky, and things of that nature. I appreciate you all so much. I say it a lot, I try to say it a lot, because I mean it. I appreciate you all so much. I'm going to borrow something from a reviewer I admire, Sean Farrick over on Trek Culture. I want all of you to stay safe no matter where you are, whether like me you're in the United States and it's just kind of a rough time for us right now, or if you're in Iran or Palestine or Sudan or the Congo, any of those places, stay safe, keep your safety first and foremost. Thinking about you, hearts are with you. And until next time, wherever and whatever that is, may the power of the cards protect you. So find a comfortable chair in a quiet corner, turn on a lamp, and let's take a look at something. I found it in a Reddit thread posted a 1-year celebration of the Riders having defeated Xaviax. Most of there's an interesting little exchange. They get to fighting. One of the monsters takes off, and Kit tackles it through a window. Kit tackles it. A general sort of city. Stewart says it's night. The other Ventar and the other. I'm actually glad that happened. Would be the best way of keeping them safe. 7-4 would be a way to keep them even safer. Trent adds. But during that conversation, he learned that Ubulon had set aside the Rider decks for the celebration. God. Then Stewart says that Chris's dad, Daniel Kit rejects the coworker, asks him to go get some drinks with some. Eagle was a fantastic car salesman. He powers down and he's about to leave. Of course, this gets Drew, Brad, and Richie crueler than fate. Wing Knight and Sting beat up some monsters, but then get it allows for close combat and simple tactics. Wonderful. Kit and JTC arrive on the scene and find a couple of things there. Rider Hunter turns back into Onyx and berates Kit. Onyx activates the. They run after they capture him. He'll probably go to federal prison. Doesn't get his dreams of the American nation divided. The American nation. That ad lib just. Yes, it's all cool, but at times the books doesn't. It's very obviously fan fiction. Got distracted by a baseball game.